little about my dad. He was kind of old-fashioned, and I think because I've said before, my parents were a little older when they had kids, because they got married in the 70s, and they didn't have my sister until the late 80s, and me either. So that was different back then. Nowadays, it's whatever. People have kids at 40, but back then it wasn't that common. So my theory is all the fun was kind of taken out of him before I was born, because my dad did not deal in childish play or anything that just wasn't normal. Like, nothing offended my parents more than acting up, like in a store, or showing out's what he always called it. And showing out consisted of, you'd think it'd just be just a kid throwing a tantrum, but no, it was anything other than shutting up and walking quietly. And I just feel like he never had a childhood, because go to McDonald's and he'd get so mad. You just want to come here for the toy. Yeah, I'm a kid. I'm 5 years old. I don't want the food. I want the toy. That's how all kids are. That's how my daughter is. She wants to go to McDonald's and get a Happy Meal and get the toy. I get that. But my dad didn't get it, because him and my uncle always felt like they came out of the womb full-grown adults. Because a lot of times we try to help my dad with stuff. He'd be working on something in the yard. I won't say my dad was like handy, could fix everything. He didn't. He knew his limits, but he could do most stuff. He could do more than I can, that's for damn sure. I can't do nothing. I can barely put in a light bulb. And we'd try to help him, but he had no patience. No patience whatsoever. He would tell you one time how to do something, and if you took more than 5 seconds to think about it, that's it. Just go. I'll do it. Because one time, he was teaching my sister to drive. It was a long time ago. And she got confused in an area, and she drove onto the grass. No, it happens. It wasn't a bad thing. She was 15. He made her get out and switch to driving. And she stopped using him to teach her to drive. She only would drive with my mom, because she would not deal with my dad. And then another time I was talking about somebody I played baseball with or football, and telling him how good he is. He turns to me and says, anyone you think is good is probably just average, and the rest of you are terrible. I think I was 12 when he told me that. And he wasn't wrong. He's right. If there's it's like you play pickup basketball with a bunch of your friends. I played with a bunch of my white friends, and a couple could shoot, and a couple could handle the ball. They were probably just average, and the rest of us were terrible. Same went for golf. If the best player you know shoots in the 80s, you think that's good. However, in the grand scheme, it isn't. It's shit. And he always just had such high standards. Nothing was ever good enough. Now with my sister, it was, hey, high five, great job. She played 1 year of softball, and I think she was being recruited by the Braves the way he carried on. Not to say she was bad. I really don't want to throw my sister under the bus. She played, and she didn't miss a practice, but I don't remember her being this ace. But and then on the other side of the scale, I don't remember me being that bad. But boy, you'd think my poor baseball skills was a character flaw, because he'd bring that up every so often. They're just like baseball. And then it fell into grades too. Because I was an okay student. I was usually A's and B's. But for a while in high school, I slacked. I'll readily admit it. But my senior year, I came home with A's and B's. And I wanted to show him the report card. I figured he'd be happy. And he said, barely scraping by, I see. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to show you any more report cards. And then for a while, I didn't like him watching my golf matches just because he was so critical. Then my senior year, I stopped caring. And one match, I shot 4 under par on 9 holes. I played some of the best. It was the best 9-hole match I ever had. And I played pretty much a perfect round. I don't know if you understand golf or anything like that. But then one of the last holes, hit a great drive, hit the green in 2, had a putt for eagle, and 3-putted. That's what he wanted to talk about. Not the fact that I shot 4 under par, it was the fact that I 3-putted. So there's just no winning with him. And I'm not saying he was horrible, he didn't mistreat me. He had some of the highest standards and just no patience. Because I couldn't have grown up during the 50s like he did, because life just sounded awful. You couldn't be a kid. You come home with straight A's, and that's not good enough. And because he did have a rough childhood. Not to say his dad was abusive, just they probably used the belt a little too much. But I don't think that affected my dad's parenting. It's just he wanted to go with the flow. He wanted everything to be just the way it should be. He didn't deal with and want to deal in childish behavior. As far as he was concerned, you should just know better. Now, my uncle's even worse. He just expected you to know. There wasn't no telling you once. At least my dad would tell you once with stuff. But mostly my dad just wanted to work, play golf, and just be left alone. Because he did work a job he hated to look after us, and he really hated that job. Which also meant that when I quit a job I hated or wanted to drop a class I didn't like, my dad would just be like, what the hell? What does liking anything have to do with anything? What do you mean you quit the job because you didn't like it? I hate my job. I don't quit it. And that's kind of the line of thinking for people now. Like, people don't want to work. But on the opposite end, he told me he hated his job and he encouraged me to do something I liked. So I was like, well, if I don't like it, why do it? So yeah, we were just different people.